Hello everybody. So we're going to continue our little Gourd Banjo building series here. This is something that I need to address. Oh, I should throw these out here. I went ahead and made tuning pegs for this banjo. I've done videos on how to do that in the past. I can do another if y'all want me to retouch on that, but I forgot to film that process. I just went ahead and made them, so sorry that I didn't show you that. But anyhow. What I'm doing here is I'm getting ready to make a bridge, or I'm sorry, a nut. The nut needs to go here. It's best to use some really hard, dense material, like bone or ebony, something like that. What I'm going to use is a piece of black walnut. I've already got it marked up. Let's see. Y'all can probably see that little pencil line. So I'm going to cut this line out, and that's that piece of walnut is going to be glued here for the nut. Now, before you can do that, you need to make sure you have a dry surface, and you want some kind of 90-degree. So I've cut into the fingerboard with a fine-toothed back saw. Oh, also, I forgot to mention, I think it helps me make straight cuts. I always use a little bubble level like this. When I set the instrument in the clamp, I'll make sure that it's all level and squared up. So you can either do this, you could just do this with the chisel, but make your cut and use the widest chisel that you can get, make it very sharp, and cut your straight line across. And then I'll probably use this smaller, very sharp, finer chisel, and I'll scoop this in and clean it out. So I've got a nice dry 90-degree spot there. Okay, so I've got my board that I'm going to cut my bridge, or sorry, I keep saying bridge, fuck. Okay, so I've got my board clamped up here. I've got my line drawn on it, and I'm ready to cut my black walnut nut out for this banjo. And of course, I always do it. I lay my level on top there so the bubble's in the center, and I think that just helps me cut a straight line. It's very important that you use the back saw for this task, because it's got the spine on the back, keeps the edge, keeps your cut straight, and you want to use the finest tooth you can to make something like a nut or a bridge. I would recommend getting one that was even finer tooth than this. So for a project like this, I'll even get on the ground and I'll line it up and start scoring. So just take your time, scoring it backwards at first along the edge of that line. I'll take my teeth just on the outside, and then I'm going to start cutting. It's important to do it at a pretty extreme angle, because that'll make your line, at least me, a little bit straighter. It's also important, keep your index finger just like you're holding a rifle. Okay, so I've got my little rough nut out, and I'm just going to go over some coarse sandpaper on a block and just come on it at an oblique at a 90-degree angle and try to, you can see where it's high and where it's low, stuff like that. Okay, so we've got the instrument back in the clamp. I've taken that rough blank of the bridge, and hoping y'all can pick that up. I rounded what's going to be the back of it to ramp the strings up. If I lay it right here, y'all can't quite see from your angle, but I can see that it actually fits quite well. It's coming up off the fingerboard just at maybe 1/8 of an inch. So that's actually good. That's what I want. So my goodness, look at this horrible mess. I've taken some cheap Elmer's glue, And I've just made a mess, and I've stuck the nut on there. So what I need is a damp rag. I'll just damp it with my own spit, and I'll wipe off that excess glue real good, and nobody will never know it was there. Also get it in here too. So at this point, if I can find a rubber band, I'll rubber band this up. If not, for a job like this, maybe I'll show you all this way. You can use some of this sort of stretchy electric tape. This stuff works pretty good for stuff like this. So I want to have some pressure on it while the glue dries. This ought to give me some pressure on there. And then I'll just pull it off. I think that ought to do me. Okay, so we've got our black walnut nut glued in there nice and snug with some cheap Elmer's glue, so if need be, you know, this could be more easily popped out. If something happens, like will happen, these nuts wear out over time, or it may break. And if you use wood glue or hide glue or something to secure this, very likely that it'll you know, break and make a big mess for you. So with this Elmer's glue, you can probably just take a vinyl punch or something and tap that out. You know, and of course the way that somebody like Boucher would have done it, they would have cut a groove and it fits snugly in there without glue. Is how they would have done it. Okay, so now we need our very sharp chisel, and I'm going to cut the ears off of this thing. Try to. Slowly taking off just a little slice of the end grain. With that, and I don't want to, you know, cause any disturbance. I don't want to pop the nut off. And of course, this is harder to do with the camera than I'm accustomed to. There we go, that was some good progress. Oh yeah. This makes for great viewing, I'm sure. Okay, so y'all can see I'm just basically taking the ears off of this. Okay, so I've had to move on to these little tiny files once I got it roughly chiseled out. And so all I'm trying to do is just kind of taper it, it's kind of hard to show, but taper it up on the sides so that when your hands are holding it, it's nice and rounded. There's no sharp piece that's going to catch on anything and cause any trouble. Well, you just kind of take your time. Sort of a slow process. Okay, now that I've basically got my nut shaped the way I want it, I need to get a ruler and a nice fine pointed pencil and try to go ahead and figure out how these strings are going to be laid. So you want them, you know, at least 1/8 of an inch in on either side, because then you're going to start experiencing problems when you go to note the first string. It's going to, or the bass string or whatever, it's going to slide off either side. And since this is only a 4-string banjo, it's real easy. I only need 3 slots in this nut. So the first thing I need to do is find the center point. Okay, center point is something like basically like that. And then so while we're on the center point, we can probably just, I'll bring it in 1/4 of an inch on either side. Give us plenty of room. Okay. So I've got my 3 strings marked. So here's one thing you don't have to do, but it'll make it a better nut. Same thing with the bridge. I'll even line up where each notch, which peg each notch is going to go to, and how I want the strings to have to twist. And so I think, and then I'll kind of slightly, when I go with the saw, I'll slightly angle my cuts so that it's directing the string better from the peg. And this is a trick that I've learned a lot of this stuff from a luthier that I know named Jack Dillon. And I sat and watched Jack in his shop over the years a few times. He taught me some of this more simple stuff. And this is one thing he taught me: to line up your slots with the peg hole. You don't have to do it perfectly, but it helps. It'll just help reduce any kind of buzzing. So that's cool. Y'all maybe can't pick that up, but this first slot is angled towards this peg. The middle slot is angled towards that peg. And then the third slot is angled toward that peg. Okay, now I'm going to take some nut slotting saws and cut these strings. You know, ideally you want the notch to be the exact diameter of the string you're going to use, but you know, I just kind of eyeball it and estimate it, since I predict people are going to be using different diameter strings. So I want it to be a little bit bigger than too small if need be, right? So I'll just do a 0.02 inches, a 0.025, and a 0.03 inches. And we'll just start cutting. And you want your cuts to go with the line toward the peg, and you want them to be kind of angled back so the string ramps up quickly onto that nut. Whoop. Now, I'm just gonna, I've brushed a little black walnut stain onto here to try to make it blend in, look like all this wood lives together. I think it looks beautiful so far. I'm very happy with this banjo. But that's pretty neat. That's our nut. It's complete. See how the slots are angled toward the pegs, so it should be real pretty and functional by the time we get this banjo finished. Okay, thanks for looking.